Hi, I'm Roxanne Lessa, the Art Quilter's coach. Most quilts are built on a grid with a square or rectangular block. But what if you're bored with that? What if you want to break free from the blocks? Sure, they're easy to assemble into a quilt, but there are limits to your creativity always being tied to a block system. In this video series, I will introduce you to another way of assembling your units or segments into a pleasing improv design. If you need some ideas of how to create an improv unit or segment, please refer to some of my earlier videos before we begin. If you need some ideas of how to create an improv unit or segment, I have some videos that will help you. I'll link those up in the description for you. So, in this video, you will learn how to make an improv quilt with no pattern and no blocks. Sounds scary, but it won't be. First, we start with a color palette and/or an inspiration picture. Then we decide on your primary shape. Moving along, we will use repetition to unify your work and use your design wall like an artist. And finally, join units into sections and join sections together to make a whole quilt. Let's go to the design table and I'll show you what I mean. I started with this photo of zinnias. I love the combination of colors, so this is what I used as inspiration to pull my fabrics from. Okay, I started out making this unit here, and I worked pretty small. So now I'm going to make my second unit, and I've picked the same colors, except I'm also going to introduce this sort of neutrally creamy gray. And I'm going to make a second unit roughly the same size, but with slightly different shapes and in a different configuration. So they'll look like they belong together, but they aren't exactly the same. Because what would be the fun of that? So I'm going to construct that, and then I will be back to show you what I made. In this clip, I'm starting with the small red shape, preparing the edges and gluing them down all the way around. Then I will audition different pieces to join it with. Here you see me gluing down the edges, getting them ready to sew onto the next piece. Now I'm auditioning different pieces of fabric. And I guess I settled with this one. Glue it down. Turn under the edges. Give it a trim. And sew it, and so on. And just keep going until I've come up with the next thing. One quick thing I want to show you is I was trimming along the back here, and I accidentally trimmed a hole in the top fabric. So after a few curse words, I decided, well, that's okay. I am going to cut a hole. I'm going to cut that piece out. And then what I'm going to do is clip all around the edge there, little 1/8 of an inch clips. I'm going to glue them underneath, and then I'm going to find another fabric to put underneath. So I have that little oval showing through, and then I'm going to sew it down. So if that happens to you, don't worry about it. It's just another opportunity for improv. I'm just going to carefully trim around that extra bit on the back side. Okay, after a good pressing, this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to go around and trim this edge. Let's see, I think I'll go like this. And then in again. Like that. I left myself a little 1/4 of an inch to turn under on that edge there for the next add-on. Okay, so I went ahead and finished all the edges on this unit, and I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Still have a few raw edges here. I'm going to finish the edges on that one. And then I have 2 units that relate to each other. They're very similar in some respects. The colors are similar. I may have to add this idea in a future unit, because this is sort of a new, this little mistake oval that I put in there. And I may start introducing a different element as I start to connect some of these together. So I'm going to meet you over on my design wall, and we'll discuss some different possibilities and ways to connect these two so that we can create sort of a nice, pleasing design. So here we are at the design wall, and you can see that I have taped off a small area with blue painter's tape, and that's going to be my little creative playground. Okay, so I may move those out or up or down as I'm working, but for now it gives me a place to start. And you can see that I've already taken my 2 units or segments, and I've started playing around with some ideas. Right now, I'm kind of liking the way these sort of peachy wings are kind of moving out. Let me get on the other side so I don't cast a shadow. Okay. And I've got some scraps over here too that I can pull from. I like this movement here, this diagonal opening that's happening here. And I'm auditioning some of these little ovals. They will be a lot smaller than that. I've just cut them larger to begin with. And I like this hot pink that's in there. And I really like this dark burgundy that's setting off all the action in here. I may decide to go ahead and use more of the dark burgundy and less of this color. I'm not really sold on this fabric yet. I'm still playing around with that idea. But I really like the idea of sort of a quiet space sort of surrounding this, giving it some breathing room. Let's just try this, for example. See what this does over here. And when I'm working like this, I do a lot of like folding just to audition how things are going to look. Let's see what this looks like now. So yeah, just playing around with some of these ideas and seeing what I like. I do like the idea of this darker color in the background, sort of out at the edges. However, this is all of this fabric that I have. So I may have to scrounge around for some other dark maroons and kind of make a sort of a patchwork background in there. Yeah, I think I'm liking that. This I might still keep in here as sort of a smaller kind of a piece. And I don't know where this is going to belong yet either. It might sort of do this kind of a thing. I might make a sort of a line of these going up, keeping this circular motion here. This line will definitely not be straight like that. I'm going to add some curves in there. But none of these are attached yet. They're just sort of slipped underneath and placed next to them. Yeah, I do like this fabric, but I think I'm going to keep it more minimal rather than as large as I had it. I really do like this dark background as a foil. And you may see some images of something that you recognize, but again, I'm not going for anything recognizable. This is just abstract, and I'm just looking for ways to kind of make a sort of a movement happen here. Like I like this little movement happening here, and maybe some other little incidental things. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and sew some of this together. I really like what's happening in here, so I might just sew that together and see what happens. And then every time I sew something together, it changes it a little bit. So I might, you know, make some adjustments as I go along. This is not written in stone here. And the other thing I might end up doing is flipping the whole design. Who knows? Yeah, I play around with all the possibilities. And that's how you use your design wall as an artist. You just play, add, subtract, fold things, try things. And I also take a lot of pictures along the way. If there's something I like, I take a picture of it so that I remember it. That way I don't have to keep it in my head. Okay, so as I said, things have already changed. I have sewed together, I've added these two pieces, and I've sewed them together. So this is all one unit now. And now I'm deciding about this little piece here, this little oval, and I'm going to add another little oval probably right there, and then continue it up there, using this piece as sort of a connecting idea, that yellow and that pale pink color. And then I'm still auditioning this background here. I may decide to do some cuts in there and then add another batik that I have. Let me go get that. Okay, so it's another dark burgundy, but it's got a little more texture to it. But I think it will blend in pretty well if I make sort of a background piece to plop that onto. And then I had made this really nice little point here, and so I wanted to extend this up a little further. So I just cut a piece of this fabric, and what I'm going to do is just sort of put it behind there for now, and decide I probably want it to go in this direction. A little bit. And just pin it there for now. And then what I typically will do is I'll take a little chalk pencil and I'll draw a little line sort of where I want it to go. So let's just say I want it to go up there, and then kind of I want it to go behind that piece and then finish over there. Let's just say something like, you can't see the chalk line right now, but let's just say I wanted to do a piece like that, and then I would pin this down and I would sew that piece up there to this piece down here. So that would join and connect that shape going up a little bit further into the background, and then I would sew it onto the background. So that's what I'm thinking right now. I haven't fully decided what's going to go on over here or down here yet. As I say, it's a work in progress, and I'll just keep going with this idea, but I do like the way this is kind of moving in these directions. And then this is a nice little secondary design element, these little ovals that kind of remind me of seeds or pods or something. So that's as far as I've gotten, and we'll keep going.